Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 3773 East Broadway. This is the Jake Feinberg Show. Coming on Power Talk, thank you so much for making us part of your day today. And what an honor it is to bring back a dear friend of the program and a guy who continues to push himself out of his comfort zone in order to grow as a musician and a human being and a father and a husband, and just a beautiful cat, deeply spiritual, and looking forward to catching up with him. Zephaniah OHora, welcome back to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Jake, what's up, man? How you doing?
I'm good, brother. You know, I had a question for you, just your own personal experience. Setting aside like the responsibilities that come when you get off the road of sort of going back to some sort of domestic life, how high are you from a 30? I mean, maybe you're physically exhausted, but from the rhythm and from that sort of incredible vibrational, non-verbal vibrational experience, how long are you in an elevated state for, if at all?
I think it really depends. I don't have a ton of experience going on really long runs and returning to anybody that I'm responsible for, but obviously now that's happening in my life the last couple of years. So, but yeah, I would say, as you know, having a kid or whatever, like when I came back, my son James was like talking, more than he ever has.
Wow.
And he was like a different person. So that was kind of a trip because it was like, well, I've only been gone for 2.5 weeks or something like that. And we were in New York for a couple of days doing shows there. And I was like, man, I missed a turning point. And that was not that long ago. So, so I think, the schedule and everything is kind of the opposite of my current life, but it's my old life schedule, so sort of like vacation back in time in a way.
I mean, just for me, like I went to see 4 shows in 5 nights, 3 Mapache shows, and then I saw Eddie Roberts play at this private gig. And I mean, I came back this week, and I mean, I'm a patron, and I'm not a road dog, and I am not having to lug my gear all over the place and have to disassemble right after the shows. And there's a lot of physical work, and sometimes the show's a dud or whatever. But, dude, I mean, I'm not perfect right now, but I just kind of wanted you to talk about if you feel, aside from the travel and the fact that it's a gig, like, do you feel healed? Like, how long do you feel healed for, if at all, after a tour like that? I mean, granted, you don't have a ton of experience, but maybe that's the most appropriate person to be asking.
Yeah, I mean, it's feels great to play music with people for that long of a time period, that stretch of time to kind of, go to some places that maybe you couldn't go to on a 3-hour gig, local regular gig. And for me, it's just a nice break from the regular routine. So I feel that I have different perspective about things, whether that be a different perspective about the music and the people that I just spent a month with, or 10 days or whatever it is. And then a different perspective on my own life and where I'm at in my life and my relationships and things like that. So yeah, I think that's what I get out of it. I don't know if you would consider that healing, but it's more like a little bit of a reset or a little bit of a recalibration of sorts,
Right. I mean, do you feel like, how did it feel? How was this, as honestly as you can? I saw you at the beginning of the tour. What was the most gratifying thing about being on tour?
There's, a few moments, or sometimes there's many moments during a set in a night or what have you, or a particular song where like you're really like, man, that was like, I felt like I was
floating,
in the audience. I was a spectator listening to Adam sing a song or something. Like I really was like wowed by the moment and that those are the same moments that it's the same kind of high or the same kind of good feeling you get if you're just going to the gas station with Koford or whatever, and you're just laughing about something, or you're talking about what's going on in either person's life currently, like what's the thing you're struggling with, and then it's somehow that led from talking about how we played that night, or oh man, didn't feel as good tonight as I did last night, or vice versa. So, and like those moments to me, looking back, and even during that time, I started realizing I'm like, I love the time like after everything's all packed back up and we're just hanging out.
Yeah.
And Austin Beatty's playing a bunch of like Frank Zappa or something, or we're listening to, he's always had a playlist or just making a playlist on the spot, listening to stuff in the bus, and that to me was like really great moments. That those are some of the moments that I'll remember the most, it's like, oh, this is great. Like just like hanging out, talking about music and life,
It's beautiful. And it's great to go behind the scenes. I mean, I have to be honest, I was a little bit jealous because, I mean, not that I'm not a musician, but I mean, it must have been kind of cool to deliver some of those you were belting out some classic Garcia tunes. That must have felt great. I mean, it's one thing to like be in the car with the kids and like, air guitaring or like screaming at the top of your lungs, but like, I mean, you were able to deliver those classic lines, sugary lines, and maybe you were your own worst critic in terms of like, saying, oh, I really flubbed that. But I mean, there must have been times where it was just like, that just feels great. That's like off the bucket list,
Yeah, for sure. Doing tunes like Row Jimmy or I'm trying to think of some other songs, or, learning how to play the Bobby parts on Shakedown Street or something. It's like, for me, it was just the joy of it is like, oh yeah, that's how they play this. Oh my God. Like I never really took the time to sit down and learn these parts. And you never, like I've told you before, you always you learn some bits and then you kind of change it a little bit, or you can't quite figure out like, what the heck is he doing there? I'm like, well, I'll just do this here, but I'll keep this part that I know he does here. But it's just cool to, either it's performing the song that you know how to sing, or the guitar part that, because a lot of the Dead stuff to me was always kind of like a mystery or something. It's like, what is that they're playing?
To me, it's like still
Bobby's guitar.
Yeah, exactly.
But then if you actually have to figure it out, then you're like, oh my God, it's actually not. It's not, it's actually not that crazy sometimes, or not that complex. And it's like, wow, that's all that part is. But I've always just thought of it as like so magical sounding, like, I mean, a lot of music's like that, obviously. So.
Zeph, I just a couple quick questions here on the. I just wonder about, what does it feel like to play with musicians? I'm just sort of, based on where you're at, instrumentally, like, anybody would always say, and I don't care if it's Ron Carter or whoever it is, they'd always say you got to play with musicians who are better than yourself. And I just wonder, like, in that sense, from a musician's point of view and from like a mental point of view, instead of how did you work on throughout the tour as it evolved, not getting down on yourself, but actually just and were you encouraged? How did you grow as a musician based on the fact that these other cats, I mean, they're all, they're great musicians. So I have to assume that your prowess, maybe it's not evident till the next tour or the next time you get on the bandstand with them, but how did you allow yourself to sort of flow with it, and do you feel like you improved, especially instrumentally on the tour?
Yeah, I definitely think that I improved in some way, and I guess the major challenge was that it's such a huge catalog, and we didn't even cover nearly all of it. There's a lot of stuff we weren't doing on that run, and there's still a lot of stuff that we haven't quite visited. But but it might be, hey, we're playing this song tonight. It's like, Christ, like I don't know if I feel 100 anywhere even 50% on that song, and it's not just me either, like it's like other guy like Tyler playing guitar, like he had a lot of homework and a lot of work on his end, because he hasn't spent decades like I have at this point listening to the Dead either, so it's like everybody had their own work to do, at least the new guys did, so it was just kind of like every night, once I found the set list, or every afternoon, I'd be like, oh, okay, I got to learn this tune, or like I got to revisit this song, because I kind of breezed through it preparing for the tour, and I need to iron out a few parts and figure out what I'm going to add to it. Try to do something a little bit different.
Right. Yeah. Well, do your thing, and what song do you feel like? I mean, when I saw you in Mesa, you stretched out on Sugary, but I mean, was there a tune that you were surprised that you were able to sort of get your arms around and actually like put your own stamp on it?
That's a good question.
You guys were doing some really cool stuff. Like, I mean, when I saw you, I missed Dear Mr. Fantasy, which is like one of my favorite early 80s tunes. Yeah. Jesus, man, it's fucking mind blowing. But like Road Jimmy's kind of a ballsy tune. But yeah, man, when I saw you play Sugary, I was like out of my mind, so happy, because like it was like I was like watching Garcia peel it out, But I wasn't sure if there was something that maybe you were like, wow, I don't really know this. I kind of got to skate and just sort of fly blind, but you were able to land the plane pretty well.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's any particular songs that stand out. I mean, there's probably just quite a few.
Right. I mean, it was just maybe parts
like
of the
Unbroken Chain or something like that, where it's like, the timing on that's really strange. There's like, just on the first intro of it, there's, I guess, like 3 different time signatures or something like that.
Absolutely. Beatty talked to me about learning that. Yeah.
Why is this doing? Why are they like? Obviously it's a fill tune or whatever, so like it makes sense. But but it was like kind of like it took me like half a day at home just to even figure out what the timing was for that intro. And then I actually Googled. I was like, "What is the time or whatever?" And someone was like, "It's actually these 3 time signatures." I'm like, "Oh, okay." I don't think of it that way. I know when it goes to this part how I count it out in my head. But right. Songs like that are such beautiful tunes too, that it feels good when we finally nailed that one. A couple nights that we did it, not every night was like, outstanding, but just doing like one tune really well one time, like, and that was one of those. I guess it's an obvious one to point out, but
no, actually it's the perfect example. And then ultimately, I think what's instructive here is that you're not trying to do it like if you can't count out 3 different time signatures at one time, you just figure out how to count it out in your head. It's okay. I've been trying to explain this to this side gig that I have, this boss that I have, who's like, he's like 80 years old, and I'm like, there's more than one way to skin a cat, and I think that to me, I just wanted you to talk about the guys in that band, and even through the road, which can eat you alive, and the travel. I mean, there were incredible aerial footage of your bus breaking down in Colorado, I think, or Utah somewhere, and like, it's not so glamorous all the time, but yet, I just interviewed Klaus Vormann yesterday, and it was like a magical interview because he was talking about, the way things were the way that there were no, but the point there were no charts. Everybody made up their own parts. The director, producer was never telling people what to play, but he said the key was that you have to be around people that allow you to be yourself, that that make you feel comfortable enough to take chances, maybe fall, maybe get picked back up by them, and just as a fan, as a patron, and as a journalist, I just look at the different machinations of Shred, and I just say, even if I was just like, like Zeph, like just kind of coming on board and sort of just figuring it out, I'd feel like, can you just talk about if that's true, if you feel like you can honestly be yourself in that band?
You know, I mean, it's a little bit of an intimidating, train to hop on with those guys just because they've been doing it for a while. Most of the majority of the band, and then obviously everyone's great musicians. But I've always played with musicians that are quite a few times better than me,
Absolutely.
at least, because that's just, for the kind of music I like playing, it's like you need good players, and um, so my strong suit has always been singing or what have you. So it's always been like, well, I can sing better than any of those guys probably. So if they can play guitar better than me, that's fine. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it takes a little time, and that was kind of part of the challenge too with that gig. Is like just a lot of material, a lot of things to pull off, and vibe with people, and be able to improvise and do all that stuff, and then be yourself at the same time. That's like definitely was a challenge for me for sure. But I think as we kind of got through the second half, it started to kind of gel a little bit more, at least for me mentally. I don't know how everyone else felt or what have you, but it did seem to come together better, as we hit our stride like halfway through the tour, and then I think by the end it was pretty good. And then we got together. We did a show in Connecticut.
That's right.
Recently, and that was like cool because a little time had gone by. Same thing with Pappy and Harriet's. It's kind of like a little time went by, so when you come back, you're like, oh yeah, and it just feels a little more cozier, and then
yeah, absolutely.
Maybe on this next run that we do in the fall, that will be another new level that we're getting to. So I don't think that nobody has any magical, like, oh, as soon as we got together, or, some people do obviously hear those stories, but it kind of takes a while for the right members to fall into the band before that actually happens. But a lot of that, I think, is just learning to listen to different people that are in the band, and learn how to play with them and against them or what have you, So
no, I was going to say the next tour in the fall. Just only people like Zeph and myself get geeked up about this, but I think I'm going to go to the shows in the kind of the central coast. You're playing the legendary Catalyst in Santa Cruz, which was the home of many Jerry Garcia band, amazing shows.
Oh, right, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
That's
I cannot even believe. And also, you're playing another amazing Garcia band, Palace, which is the Phoenix in Petaluma, and I was there for Circles, and it is so. I mean, the spirit is so strong in that venue. I am so psyched. To me, so much of the musical experience for me is being in these hallowed bar. I don't even. It was like these ballrooms that
Sure,
have still been manicured. Still been kept up and. Like that one in Petaluma, the Phoenix, man, is, I mean, there's just people have been painting on the walls for years, and just to know that Garcia band was there in '83, it's so funky and cool. So part of it, I mean, I'm trying to think. The second half of the tour, New York was the middle part, kind of like when you were able to come back to Brooklyn, and then after that there was like maybe a couple more weeks.
There was like Nashville after that. The Philly show was really good. That was one of my favorites. I thought that was a great show. And then I think when we got to Omaha, that was kind of like, at least for me, it was like, oh, thank God we're out of Colorado, like, because we were at high elevation for whatever, a week or something, and like
yeah, that stuff
my skin, and just like, oh yeah, it's just like my skin is like so dry, and like, I don't know, it's just nice to like change states after a couple days. But we got to Omaha, and that was a cool gig, and we played really great, and people just were super into it, and it wasn't a big room or like an insanely big crowd, but it was a pretty good turnout. And then we just hung out with the locals afterwards at a bar down the street.
Yeah, I think I saw a video of that, dude. There were like people on stage or something. It was wild to see that. It was a wild scene.
Yeah, maybe. I can't remember.
It was just somebody was taking video on the stage during the show. That was what was kind of tripped out. Zeph, we have a game on this program called Name That Voice. I want you to take a listen to this.
All right.
Come back and break it down.
Grateful Shred. Everyone kind of like we all kind of like fill certain roles within the projects and stuff. And I've kind of like in that situation, kind of like when like in the sort of residency style thing, just being a band leader creates this thing, this like heightened awareness of like the people around you and like organizing this stuff. And so I kind of got to a point to where I was like constantly putting these like shows together and like focused on like getting the material together, getting people in the same place, and like and I think I took away a lot of experience on that level from it. And also you just like sing every week, and you're just like cranking after a while. And I think you really get to a point to where you can like kind of just like sing your ass off, and like I don't know. I think that's kind of like what I like about it a lot, is just like it keeps you sharp and all that stuff. So
all right, Mr. OHora, who is that?
That's old Mr. McCutcheon, Austin McCutcheon.
Kutch, as he's affectionately known as.
That's right.
I mean, dude, Kutch is sort of like, to me, like this, I don't want to say unsung hero. I think he's sort of the glue. He never was really that into the Grateful Dead. He sort of backed into it tangentially. But I know, can you just talk a little bit about, I saw this thing where he's like, by the way, I'm playing with the Western All-Stars in LA. This is before the Shred tour. And he's like, my dear friend Zephaniah OHora is going to be opening the show. And I was like, damn, I would have loved to have seen that. And the next thing I know, you're in Shred. And like, can you talk a little bit about your musical relationship with Kutch and I think more to the point also, like what he was talking about is, how you can't just, unless you're just busking on the street, it's hard to just have gigs. But he was just talking about having these residencies and being able to keep sharp and really be cranking singing wise. And as a vocalist, that is your strongest part at this point musically. Have you been able to at least crank a little bit on the side since you've gotten back in terms of having gigs? How important is it to fill up that void once you come off a tour like the one you just came off of?
Yeah. You want me to talk about how I know Austin, or you're saying just like?
It was like a multi-part question. Yeah. Basically, Kutch he's playing with the All-Stars once a week, or he has, and in the past before COVID, he'd always have gigs that to keep him sharp, and so that was more, talk a little bit about, you can talk about your relationship with him, but also ultimately, have you been able to fill that void and been able to sing for your suppers since you kind of got back?
Yeah, I guess I'll answer the second question because it's probably a quicker answer. But after that tour, I honestly didn't do too many gigs because I have other things I do like booking and stuff. So I had to really catch up on that, catch up on family stuff, and so I wouldn't say like. And sometimes I actually feel like if you just stop playing for a little bit and then you come back to it, it's like, oh yeah, like you get it just like a little reset. I feel like I talked with
I put this video clip up on Instagram. That you said the exact thing where you get away from it for a hot minute and things that might have kind of befuddled you before somehow fall into place after a few weeks.
Yeah, because Alex is someone who's very much like we have those similarities as far as like we're very analytical people, or like we really think about things, and so sometimes it's good to just not go near it, just not even think about it, not do it, and just go back to regular life without that, just for a little bit of time, and then you feel like, oh yeah. But I do also agree with Austin's thing, and I've done countless weekly residencies for the last 10 years, basically at Skinny Dennis and a few other spots around New York, that there is a thing that once you keep doing that, you're just like, nothing phases you. You know what I mean? It's just like you can recover from anything.
Oh, I love it. How does that work? I mean, just because...
I don't know, it's just like... I've told this before too. I tried to get into like smoking pot, like while performing, like with Shannon. Like, this is like the later years of the Roundup Boys, like when we had been doing it for a while. So we really like knew that all those Merle tunes and other country tunes were doing like pretty through and through. So like we were just like, let's just get stoned, before second set and you stretch out a little bit.
Right,
and just like,
right.
And you're like I'm singing the song, and I'm like, I don't even know what the next line is. It's just like, it's like, I don't know where it is. And I'm in my mind, I'm sort of freaking out, like, oh my God, where's the next line? And then it just appears, and then you sing it, and it's like this, you're not in control. It's hard to explain, but you could do that kind of stuff after you've done, 200 of those gigs, or however many times we did it before I started, doing that. Whereas shred, it's like, I'm not gonna be high necessarily.
I mean, in some ways, it's like
if I've never done that music before. It takes some time to really internalize it all. Then, throughout the tour, then you're like, you know what, I'll get a little stoned tonight or whatever. It helped me kind of loosen up. But especially with drinking and stuff. But I'm getting off on a tangent on that. But
well, first of all, this is what we love about Zeph. I mean, but the thing is that
well, get back to how I met Austin. So. I've known Austin, I think, probably since like 2010. He used to work at a coffee shop across the street from this bar that I worked for, and he also worked as like a bar back at that bar. And then in 2013, Skinny Dennis opened up, and then I started booking him in his bands, the Velvet Bone Breakers, I think they were called, and they played every Tuesday night, and that was like the beginning of that bar, and people like were really excited about it, and lots of people were coming out, and like all the best musicians in New York, or not all of them, but a lot of them, were there playing in different incarnations. And sorry, this garage door is open up over here. I remember I went and saw him play with them for the first time, and he was playing with Arthur Vint on drums, and Scott Koberg on bass. Yeah. And Johnny Lamb on pedal steel, I think. Or no, it was just Luca Benedetti on the guitar, and I was just like blown away. And Austin's delivery and the way he sang, and I was just so jealous that he had a band that good and like playing music that sounded so spot on with the kind of stuff I'm into. And so then I was like, man, I gotta like try to find a way to like use these musicians for whatever I'm trying to do, So that's kind of how we really got to know each other more, I guess, in the Skinny Dennis days. And then shortly after that, he moved out to LA. So, basically I've known him since the dawn of the Skinny Dennis era.
And then like, I just am curious about like the setup. Like when you showed up for the gig, he's like, yo, after the show, let's get some drinks. And he's like, yo, you want to join Shred? I mean, how did that work?
Yeah, we kind of had already talked about, I went out there to shoot some of that footage or whatever that we did. We did like some rehearsals and stuff, just so that was kind of, but we didn't announce it yet, so I just went out there and played a gig while I was out there. That was kind of how that happened.
I dig. I wanted to, like, you're in Louisiana right now. I mean, you haven't relocated down there? You're just down there hanging out?
Yeah, no, we're just down here staying with some family for a little bit, and it's kind of just regrouping. Just like a lot of stuff happened in my life in New York. I got in like a car, not a serious car accident, but like that happened. We had all these issues with our apartment that I've lived in for ages, and it was just kind of felt like, you know what, maybe it's time to get out of this situation. But the real estate market there is like insane right now, or everywhere, or it was at least a month ago or so. So we just decided like to regroup and figure out where we want to live and how we want to live. So
I love
just
it.
kind of doing a little temporary hiatus away from New York and to see where we're at.
New Orleans. I mean, I don't. Are you? Where are you in? Like, are you?
Oh no, I'm in like I'm in Shreveport.
Shreveport,
so
yeah.
it's about 4 hours from New Orleans. I guess it's west, so it's pretty close to Arkansas and Texas.
Have you found yourself like, obviously not necessarily like playing a ton of gigs because you've just been dealing with other stuff, but when you get down to a place, I mean, Sandy Rothman wrote Mississippi Moon probably in that Louisiana general area. I just wonder about like how much for you, even with an analytical mind, and even though sometimes it can thoughts can be racing. I mean, have you found an opportunity, in this time, like where some seeds of songs, original songs have come into you?
I've had some stuff kind of recently, but honestly, I started to feel more of that like leaving New York because, we're packing up all our stuff and putting it in storage and leaving an apartment building that I lived in for, I don't know how many years, 8 years or something, and just putting all my studio stuff in storage and keeping what I need for now. So, I suddenly started like I got a couple new tunes where I was like, oh yeah, okay, this is a good place here, a good spot. I wish that I could have almost just stayed in New York and slept on the floor in my studio space that you've been to.
Yes.
And just like wrote a whole record of it's just like change and moving to possibly a different place or leaving a place you've been at for a long time. Definitely brings that out. You get out of your regular routine and norm in a much more impactful, serious way than going on a tour. You know what I mean? Where it's like,
well, I mean, dude, you're going to
moving apartments. Is always kind of like a fresh start, a different perspective. I'm always a little nostalgic, so I always look back at everything that's happened to me. But it's also crazy because that apartment that we lived in, like every single song that's on my 2 records was written there, and my son was born like in basically the same room but the next floor up, so like it's like I was thinking about all that kind of stuff. Like,
yeah, no, I mean, I want to say a couple things though. I just want to give you I want to give you a little bit insight. I mean, first of all, you came back and your son was talking up a storm, but I mean, you didn't miss anything. He just, I mean, in some ways it was this, as Miles would say, it was space, and space is part of music too. And so to have that space to come back and see that kind of growth is absolutely beautiful. And in no way should you, punish yourself for missing those opportunities. I mean, I always say to people, like with my kids, like out of 10 opportunities to actually engage with them, whether it's a board game or swimming or throwing a ball around, whatever it is, if I'm present, if I'm fully present for 3 out of 10, then I'm doing a heck of a job. I mean, in baseball, 3 for 10 is that you're hitting 300. That's a good average. So, this incentive, like people always think, oh, I'm not being present enough. You know what happens? What winds up happening is if you beat yourself up too much, then you wind up being pretty mediocre 10 out of 10 times. I'd rather just show up 3 times hard. I mean, and that, and that to me is, so that's one thing. And then, absolutely, like, I mean, you guys probably will not. You don't think you'll be heading back to Brooklyn, though?
I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
It just feels like I've been there for a really long time. It's like it's good to just do something different and move along. But I don't know. It's always, as you know, a little more complicated with when you've got more than just yourself to think about. But
totally.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just like a weird time on the planet. It's always a weird time on the planet, but especially right now. And you kind of get to a point too. At least I get to a point. But I feel like a lot of people I know living in New York, where they're like, I don't know if you're supposed to be around this many people, you know what I mean? And this close of quarters.
Yeah, I did.
Like, I don't know. Because, dude, you know, I've been here now. I drove down from New York, stopped into Nashville for a minute to see some friends and hang out. And took me 3 days to drive down here. And I've been here, I don't know, a week and a half or something like that. Maybe 2 weeks now. And I realized the other day, I was like, man, I haven't like really lost my temper at all, you know? And it's not like there isn't shit going on in my life still, you know, things to be stressed out about, or like other work stuff that I do with bookings and things or whatever. Like, but I was like, man, I can think of every single day in New York, there's several instances where you're just like, you know, cursing someone out like under your breath or in your car or like
Totally,
whatever.
dude. The aggravation.
Just like,
you're telling me that the space is you're getting space there.
Yeah, you're fighting in New York. You're just constantly always fighting for your ground, your space to occupy, and people. It's just like it's only natural. It doesn't mean that New Yorkers are mean people. It's that you have to be a little more aggressive, and you have to. You're easily triggered and fly off the handle. At least maybe like that's just getting older and being there for a long time. They would say that means you're jaded, but I really think it's a thing, and it's just a physiological and psychological like reaction to being around so much energy, which is great when you're 20 something and you're like, man, this is so much energy. It's great. You know, it helps me do things, but eventually you're like, you know what, maybe I don't need to be around all that. You know?
No, you are articulating. I mean, I love going back for 4 to 5 days and feed that and get refilled with that energy. But then that rat race mentality kicks in, and I don't even want to try to keep up. Like, to me, like, I will say there might be a bit of a honeymoon period for you right now, but I think it's great that you're not.
Oh, of course.
You know, but that you're not in like I think it's really important to evaluate that. I mean, I just feel like are we going to see Zeph in Mill Valley? I mean, are you going to go back out to where Garcia lived? I mean, to me, it's like, you know, like, but I do feel like there are, you mean that fundamentally for yourself, constitutionally, just that grind and that daily sort of aggravation as it relates to fighting for that territory, I think you've done your time. I mean, I think it's time to move on. The cool thing is trying to make
my
sure.
My roots will always be there. I'll always have, you know, the people I'm working for there, working skinny dentists and places like that. And I'm hoping to expand that on some level, you know, like that's my long-term goal as far as, because I just love being around music and curating. I don't even need to be playing music, you know. I mean, I love playing music, but I also just love when people are, and that's what's been so great about Skinny Dennis, why that place has been one of the greatest things that ever came into my life, even though people might look at it and be like, oh, it's just like a bar, like a sort of a honky-tonk bar in New York, which is weird, but just all the people I met and all the people I connected with and made music with, you know, it's just like, that is just so great. And in the first like 5 years, I could just walk in there. It was like Cheers, you know what I mean? It was like,
it's freaking great. That's freaking
knew
great.
My name, and like I get to drink for free.
Everybody knew my name, dude.
Everyone was happy because it was like, dude, thank you so much. I've been paying my rent playing gigs here. You know what I mean? Like,
that's beautiful.
So you're like offering that for the community, and like, so to me, I want to do more of that and try to be more involved in those types of ventures, because I love when I go to a room full of people and they're like psyched about the band playing and the band sites because they're getting paid well, and like it's awesome, you know. And that to me is the greatest, or one of my favorite things, you know. Not about being in the limelight on a stage, you know. That's its own thing, but
yeah, because you know what it's called? It's called building like a self-sustaining community, you know, and like that's you. Ultimately, you want people to be happy within that community. I mean, I think that,
right.
You know, and I mean, you know, it's such, we're in such a dark, I mean, if you really look at it, I actually, this is something that's popped into my head. I mean, we are so polarized right now. I mean, it's, and I don't even really get into, I mean, I've actually learned the hard way just to, I know it sounds pretty obvious, but just like avoid like like there are just people. I mean, it's breaking my heart a little bit because.
And we've all learned the hard way as far as that goes, man.
I know, man. You know what it is, though?
Talking
like
about politics or whatever.
Well, just the idea that, like, there's just a lot of very, I guess, I don't know how, I guess they're decent people. And at the core, I know they're good people, but yet they actually, like, someone said this the other day. I forget who I was interviewing, but they said ignorance is not a pass. And the point is that, like, they're not conspiracy theorists. They're good people. They're honest people. They're nice people. And yet they choose not to see what's there. And that's ultimately, I mean, for people with kids, I mean, even myself, I mean, I plan on being on in this life for a while. It's just like, that's how democracy ends, is when enough good people do nothing. And that to me is like the atrophy of that. And so how important is it for you, not talking about politics, but just like, I have a tendency to be incredibly introverted at times. COVID has only exacerbated that. I do have to get myself out and, engage. Although I've been telling people that lately I just really don't want to talk a whole lot, and I'd rather just have nonverbal communication, however that looks, through rhythm, through dance, through intimacy, whatever it is. Like, I'm just sort of done talking, but yet I also know I need to connect with peeps. And I just wonder if you could talk a little bit about, granted, we just talked about this insane web of humanity in New York, but how important is it for you to try to keep your heart, how do you keep your heart open and engage people outside of your family and your son? How important do you think it is for people to stay connected? It sounds like a very simple thing, but I just feel like these are absolutely historic times, and there's such a lack of sort of.
I know what you're trying to.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead. I mean, you can riff on that any way you want, but it's like, I mean, the only times it's really, I don't know what the right word is, but yeah, man, I can only be at shows. That's the only place that really I feel really good at. I don't, and I can't really explain that, but you can riff any way you want on that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's really important, being connected. I mean, that's where the conspiracies come in about COVID, where you're like,
that's right.
What was the purpose of all that? If we know that a lot of it was bullshit and it was so messy, and a lot of it's just people just trying to figure out, well, how do we handle this thing, But obviously it did a number on like community and people like connecting with people and not being like social distancing, all that kind of stuff. Right. And then just weighing like how important is that with the loss of some human life on some percentage of the population? Like, what's more important? It's like those are really tough questions to grapple with. So yeah, and then it's it's strange because we're all like weirdly more connected than ever because of the internet. So yeah, I don't really know what the answer is for that, other than like it is really important. But I think that a lot of the issues that we're having in the world right now is because, like the sort of the Nietzsche death of God kind of thing. Like we like lost some sort of central thing that a large percentage of people in the country believe in, like it's like a religion or whatever. And so we're now on this point where we're trying to find, like, we're all in a moral conundrum of sorts, like trying to figure out like what's right, what's wrong, what have you. Everything's kind of whatever you want to believe, which doesn't really work really in reality.
No, it doesn't.
It
doesn't. I mean, I want. Go
that's
ahead.
Where we're at. Like,
well, what specifically? I mean, as you said, that specifically, what was that compass, or that foundation, that, for lack of a better word, that God foundation that broke apart? I look at it and I just say, like, ultimately, yeah, like, like if you're still operating on an old paradigm like pre-COVID, you're probably going to be not in a great place. I think everybody needs to alter their sort of life, and what I mean by that is like not live in fear, and really go about and live with gusto, and yet people are still operating a little bit on this old paradigm, like, and I feel like it was a game change in some ways. Is that the collapse of sort of the fundamental truth that you're talking about?
I'm meaning more like if people don't all have like a central like ideology based, like in the past it's been around Christianity or what have you in this country, but like in a lot of countries obviously, but if we don't have something like that, because obviously the whole thing with that anyway is that it's all it is human experiences written down, or human knowledge, like knowledge that took us centuries and centuries and centuries to come up with or to gather from our experiences and create, archetypal kind of like stories that can help guide you through your life, And don't get me wrong, I grew up in the church, but I'm not like a church going believer or anything like that.
The spirit is inside. Yeah, that's fine.
But I'm just saying, like, I don't know what the right answer is other than like we don't have something like that anymore. Like, and what's happened is now the state or the politicization of things, the politics of things, and all that social stuff, that has become where people are getting that from. So there's a constant battle of who's right, who's wrong, who's evil, and who's good, and all that stuff. So I don't know. It's a complex topic that I'm really not even qualified probably to be commenting on.
Well, that's fine.
Read about it.
I think that everybody has their own feelings about it, and I just think that.
But I also think that COVID, people have already moved on, and people are over it, or people moved on a while ago, and people also just like want to concern themselves with other things. But it's also the kind of thing you could look at it as, well, that's how humans are in general. Like, you don't worry about tragedy or threats or danger till it happens to you, and it's always like, oh, it's just happening to someone else,
That's absolutely
so
right.
There's that trap, of course, but I really don't think, trust me, I'm not a scientist, so I don't know. I can't say anything, but
well, you've had a lot of real world experience, and I think that,
a lot of people,
I think a lot of people haven't moved on, and if I was over 60 and had some immune compromised stuff, maybe I'd feel the same way. But I also don't like. I was downstairs with the Alalas, that band, in Fort Collins. They played a show with Mapache, and we were having a very interesting discussion about how just patrons in general, how things, what their agent or booking agent or manager's telling them is just, and this could be, maybe this, I'm not talking about a random, Tuesday night at Skinny Dennis when it's packed to the gills and everybody's having a ball. Just in general, like on these tours, and a lot of this also has to do with, unfortunately, the trauma that's been created with all these mass shootings in these public events. But less people are going out. The people that are going out, they're not going out as late. I've been seeing shows. Dead Incorporated, 6:40 start. I'm like, what is this? 6:40, so like everything, there is this little, it's affected the.
Yeah, I've noticed that on tour too. I was saying that to some of the guys. I was like, because the other weird thing about, and I don't know if it's this band or it's just the time period or the type of crowd but it's so different from any of my own tours I've done, where I actually met people afterwards and talked to people, and someone would be like, man, your song means this much, or like, I love this song, or thanks so much for being, creating music, and la-da-da-da-da. And, the shred shows, it would just be like a big crowd. And then by the time, even if we had guys loading our stuff back into the trailer, by the time you get off the stage and clean up the things you're supposed to clean up yourself, you get back out and there's no one in the venue. The venue is closed, and I'm like, what? It's like 10:30.
Dude,
like,
I'm telling it's no. That's and that I'll answer your
that
question.
happened in many places. It happened in Philly too. Like it happened at all the Brooklyn Bowls, I guess too. Which I was surprised. Like I feel like they used to have people used to just hang out afterwards. And then I was like, is it just because of COVID? Like the venues feel like they don't, want to risk too many people hanging out for too long or something. I don't know.
Let me tell you something. It is absolutely
it's
bizarre. I know. First of all, they've made it to a point. I mean, safety is like, they're so concerned about, not just COVID, but just the potential for, some kind of violence. Not even at a shred show, but I mean, there were issues that I didn't. But this one show that I was at with Alas, and it happened a couple times, no re-entry. So, like, if you went out,
wow.
Like, theoretically, Mapache finishes the set, go out, smoke a cigarette, whatever. No, you're not coming back in. So, like, it's fundamentally, like, these places are on lockdown. And that, to me, is like...
I kind of wish there were, like, a couple fights that would break out.
Exactly,
like, just
dude.
Chaos.
Yeah, no, that'd be great for chaos. Yeah.
I went with Gary Waldman, who's my manager and Neil's manager and longtime friend who runs all the Neil Casale Foundation stuff, and John Grayboff. We all went and saw the Dead documentary when it came out. Sure. We just went and saw it in the theater, like in Manhattan, over on like 6th Avenue near like the West Village, and it was awesome. It was just like I was so pumped because I was kind of really getting back into the Dead by that point, like in a much more serious way than I did in the past, but when we came out of there and we smoked the joint in the theater, or I smoked the joint, I don't remember if those guys did, but like people were just smoking joints. So I was like, whatever, I guess I'm going to do it too. Like, and like, it was just such a scene. Like it was like the Dead crowd, like all the like, characters and like kind of, creepers and like all those people were there. And like, when we got out of the show, it was like this whole thing of like, some scuffling and something happened, some crazy guy yelling about something, and some other people like clearly like they're high or stoned or whatever, and like people are a little drunk and like on edge. Like everything felt like edgy.
Yeah, dude, it's like 84 all over again, man.
Yeah, it temporarily like changed the vibe of that corner, and that corner is always right by the subway there. There's always like a lot of like homeless people and kind of crazy people hanging out there, but it just like magnified it, like, and there was cops around, and I was also really stoned, so I was like, whoa, what's going on out here, man? Like whoo, could have watched out for the friggin' freaks, man. But like, to me, that's fun, like, rather than like everybody just goes home and but that's just my opinion.
Oh, I mean, it's absolutely spot on, and it is definitely through
like anytime I've gone to any I saw Further a bunch of times, like years ago, like and like I went with my brother, and like we'd go to like the lot, like hang out in the parking lot, shakedown, hang, and like there's always characters there. And when you get into the venue, there's always something happening, like some guy's running from security or the cops, like almost no clothes on, like, man, what's going on with that guy? Like that's the fun of it, because it's like people are really pushing the envelope.
Dude, totally, bro. The edge
I
is
love
key.
that vibe.
Yeah, I love that you just talked about that. Ultimately, there's got to be a balance, but yeah, I mean, they clear people.
It got worse in the 80s and 90s.
Dude, it got real intense. But I got
in a good direction, but yeah.
It's okay. You know what it is? People, it does need to get a little bit looser. I mean, and the idea that they're whisking people out. That's the other thing. The venue is shut down by 10:30. It's like persona non grata. So anyway, I have one more Name That Voice for you, and we'll come back.
Okay, cool.
Well, especially when you're playing improvisational music, this thing happens where the only way or the most convenient way I can describe it is, if people are familiar with Star Wars and the Jedi, where it's almost like your reflexes are faster. You get into this almost kind of superhuman zone that you cannot take credit for it at all, you know. And hence that's why people even describe, they're like, they'll say, it seemed like I was watching myself do it. That's proof that you can't take credit for it. You know? Because when you get there, it's like, it happens itself, you know. So, I don't know. It's when we start playing together, you link up, you're almost like telepathic with each other, and you become of one mind. So you start playing the exact same thing together. Me and Kofi will actually make mistakes together.
Right.
Like, we're so linked up. If he goes off the rails, I go off the rails at the same time, or vice versa. Like, I don't even know who's leading the screw up because it's simultaneous. As we also will play sometimes the exact same rhythm or chord or as literal note sequences together, you know. The odds of these things happening are very, very, the odds against them are very high.
Right.
Very, very high.
Right.
But it happens all the time. I mean, me and Kofi didn't play together in a band like every night for 15 years. And then when we got together in Tedeschi Truck Band, first day, it didn't take any time to come back. This was immediate. And I was like, well, you know, you can write that off to we're brothers, and, you know, and that's probably some of it, you know, but there's some parts of the stuff that's just flat out mind-blowing and mystical, and, you know, it kept me interested, you know.
Zephaniah, you want to take a guess at who that is?
Oh man, I was running a couple of people through my head. Like, is that songs?
His brother. He gave you a big clue there. His brother Kofi.
Oh.
And they may not even help you, but that was my interview with O'Teal Burbridge.
Oh, okay, yeah. I kind of recognized the voice, but I was like, this might be someone that I don't know that well.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know him obviously personally.
No, you know, he was talking about that. Well, we were talking about the sort of similarities of the. I don't know, when you go through one of these, when you're in a group setting with a dear friend, and you're on some sort of psychedelic trip, as well as playing music in a band, and all of a sudden you get into the zone, and and I just, you know, you mentioned Shannon before. I don't know, that guy is. I don't know where he came. I don't know. He's just become. He was such a genuinely sweet person. I didn't know him before really going on Cat's tour and stuff, but I just, it was weird, man. Like, there were times where I was watching him on stage, just like his mannerisms, and it was like, I mean, he was his own person, but it just felt like Neil was up there, and it was crazy, and just a beautiful person, very accessible, very open, very much understanding, got the memo. And I just wanted you to talk a little bit about, like, O'Teal was talking about him and Kofi being in Tedeschi. They hadn't played in a band for years. They played with, like, Colonel Bruce Hampton, and then spent quite a few years not playing together, and then they get back into Tedeschi Trucks, and boom, it was like that telepathy was just locked in again, and they were laughing about it. And I just wanted you to talk about that, you know, with Shannon, Roy Williams, these amazingly, like, brilliant musicians that are, on top of that, just extremely humble, beautiful human beings.
Yeah, you're asking if we've experienced a similar thing.
I'm not even asking. I'm just gibberish at this point. But no, you know what it is like. Just like that, the ability for you and Shannon. Can you just like not play for a minute and then just like sort of lock in again? You were kind of talking about that before, where you had all the songs down pat and decided you were going to smoke a joint during set break. But I think more important, like, can you just talk about, like, when you guys get back together and play again, it feels like no time has passed, or you can just get back into that telepathic zone again. I just feel like that's how magic and music and the mysticism of music is created.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for me and John, it was always a thing of, I think, we just spent so much time together outside of music, just as friends, over the years, and hanging out, and, having fun, partying in places, or being at the same job, and hating the meeting we had to be in, or laughing about something about the job, or learning new things that we were trying to figure out how to do it in that craft. And so we we just went on the 10,000 walks to go get an iced coffee or a coffee down the street, at a place called La Colombe in the city. So I feel like that for playing music, it just was like, we both, I didn't have to explain anything to John, because he knew, where, like, the stuff that I was into and the vibe I was going for. He knew where that's coming from. So I never had to, like, necessarily be like, don't play that, I would never say that probably to anyone anyway, but it just kind of always, we just had so much history that it just kind of felt easy in a lot of ways, and obviously he's such a great musician that I could really rely on him, because I did some other tours without him on guitar, and it's like always a little bit of an adjustment, you know what I mean? And yeah, playing with Roy, I spent less time hanging out with Roy, but I did hang out with Roy a lot over the years. But I definitely sang with him a lot. So like we always had little moments where we'd go to a same spot, or like we were like, oh yeah, that's where we're going. Like we kind of have a laugh about it in the moment, So yeah, that's also just playing with great musicians too, but it's also, I haven't played necessarily like super improvisational music with those guys. You know what I mean? So
yeah, no. So totally. You're doing more. But the point is that you can, like, that personal connection, the friendship. Even interviewing Klaus yesterday, talking about George Harrison, he's like, we would go to breakfast together, we'd go to lunch together, we'd walk in the garden together. We obviously play music together, but it's like, I know that, like, even what you were saying, after everything's wrapped up and you get on the bus and Beatty's playing some, song list, and you're trying to figure out what that's like the human element where love is created, and that ultimately creates more trust when you get out and be vulnerable on the bandstand to say, I'm going to go for it, and I hope they're going to cover my ass. To me, it's like, that is what it's about, and
yeah,
and that's the beautiful thing. That does more than some sort of pyrotechnics or some sort of really intellectually based song. It's like, if the band is having fun and they have trust in each other, then that's really what it's about.
All of that's built on just actual genuine friendship, right, which obviously you hear about with like guys like the Dead or many bands, and that was the way it's always been as far as playing music with Shannon. Is like, he knew like all my struggles, and like he was there as my friend, like through all the stages I went to get any kind of recognition, like make a record and like accomplish those types of things. And he knew all my like insecurities, or I would always send him my demos, songs I'm working on. So like he knew all that stuff. So he knew a lot of things that most other people don't know about me, or at least on the professional as a musician or a songwriter or whatever. So like that all gets wrapped together when you get on a stage, because you're not communicating, but yeah, that person has your back, and that person knows kind of like where you're headed, because they've just spent so much time around you that, it works, which is just that's the challenge when you go join a band like Shred or something, where you got to let that time go by where you actually have some non-musical experiences in order to feel mentally okay there, you know what I mean? Or as you say, like, be yourself or whatever. Like,
I love it, dude. You nailed it.
You know what I mean?
You just articulated it so well, because you need to have those non-bandstand experiences to create that that reciprocal, I don't know what the right word is, loyalty, or trust, or just sort of knowing that, and that does take time. But with Shannon, it was like, I don't know, man. Like some cats are just much more verbal, or they're much more. I don't know. I just appreciate what he brings to the table, man. I mean, there's a lot of cats who are beautiful people, but and you just never really know it all the time. You know, they don't necessarily. They're pretty guarded, or they're exhausted, or whatever. But I just always feel like Shannon is going the extra mile. I mean, the guy was incredibly inspiring for me, and
Yeah.
I'm just happy that he. I'm happy you guys are connected. I just wanted to ask you in closing. Have you
Sure.
have you discovered recently, or is there any new artist, not contemporary per se, but any record you're just playing that's just off the beaten path and that you can hit people to?
Oh man.
I want to know because I want to tell you what I've been listening to because it's right up your Do you know this
Yeah.
cat Milton Chesley Carroll?
Um.
I'm gonna send, dude. I'm telling you, I got this album on RCA. I think I can't know exactly what his background is, but he did this album, a self-titled album on RCA, 1972, and they put, like Gad, Tony Levin, Hugh McCracken, Pat Rebel, like classic studio cats. I mean, this is like country funk, soul. It's really, and it's all vocal. I mean, I'm going to send you the full album because it's just burning, dude. It's on, and he does like the Mose Allison tune, Seventh Son.
Nice.
Yeah, it really hip.
I was
Yeah.
listening to Mose Allison recently.
Dude, Mose is so in the zeitgeist right now. It's
Yeah,
unbelievable.
like I'm always checking out new old stuff or what have you. I mean, I've definitely listened to this Gary Burton, Keith Jarrett record. I've also just been checking out more Keith Jarrett in general.
Definitely. Wait, hold on. You talking about the one with them, like in that Stonehenge place on the cover?
Yeah, it's like a gray cover.
Oh, dude, that's a sick album.
It came
dude.
out in maybe 71 or something
I think
like that.
Yeah.
I was actually talking with Adam on the tour too about Keith, and just obviously, I was asking him about. I'm like, "What's some good records, man?" Like, I somehow stumbled upon one of his records, and then I was like, "I never checked. I don't know why I never really checked him out." And my older brother told me some story. He used to work for San Francisco Jazz Festival. He used to make all their artwork posters in the '90s when he lived in San Francisco.
Wow.
He's been able to. Yeah, he's been able to meet all these insane people, everyone from endless list of people, like Pharoah Sanders, Idris Muhammad, all these people. But anyway, he said he was doing security somewhere or something, and he got invited to go check out. Keith was playing somewhere in town, and it was a room that had a balcony, and they got super high, super stoned or something like that. And, watched the whole show from above.
Oh,
and he was just
God.
blown away, or he was just like, "What? This guy is a crazy guy."
Wow.
Yeah, he's got some really great stories. He's into a lot of great music, so he got to see a lot of those people, when they were still alive in the '90s. But anyway, yeah, I've been getting into some of his stuff just because.
I mean, that's any yacht rock, anything that I want to know what's in your wheel. I mean, no one. I mean, we can't. We're not at that level yet with Keith Jarrett in terms of improvisation. But is there some yacht rock? Is there? I mean, I just found some insane. I want to know what you're getting off on, what you're singing when you're walking down the dirt roads in Shreveport. Maybe it hasn't happened yet. I don't know. You can say that, and it's okay.
Well, I haven't really been walking down many streets in Shreveport, to be honest. I just drive everywhere here. But
dude, I want to be honest. By the way, the one reason it's I just want to point this out, at least in Tucson. I mean, one reason it's so even more intense. It's 105 every day. It's really hot.
Oh, dude, yeah,
it's really freaking hot, dude.
It's been over 100 degrees every day here for the last week and change, and it's gonna be like that for a while too. I always listen to a lot of solo piano stuff. I mean, what else? Just trying to think of. I've been listening to that Manassas record recently.
Wow, I gotta check. I gotta go back to the wood on that.
Yeah, I forgot about that record, and this guy Herb Penderson. This record called Lonesome Feeling. It's just kind of like a almost Clarence White vibe.
How do you spell his last name?
Herb Penderson. I think it's spelled
Is it Herb Peterson or Herb Penderson?
Peterson. Sorry.
Yeah, no, Peter. I love that cat. He was in the Dillards for a minute.
Yeah. That album. I can see the cover of it.
Yeah,
but,
I know. I really love where you're. I love where you're
going.
You're in this 70s milieu. You know.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, I'm always listening to a lot of stuff, so it's really tough to say like what's really been getting me, because I just kind of listen to all sorts of stuff. Whatever.
Well, what I'm saying is that like pretty soon you're going to be running those playlists late night on the shred bus, dude. You got to throw some of that down, you know.
Well, I do try to hop in a little bit. Like I'll at least ask Beatty to play. Like
you need to hop in, dude. Beatty's the most. I mean, those cats are the most beautiful. I love them so much, man. Most beautiful cats. I also wanted to ask you before I let you go. I know you don't have the schedule in front of you, but you think are you going to be like? Is there places to stay up in OHora? Are you guys like camping out? Because there's like, I'm going to drop like $500 on this hotel. I'm just wondering if there's like any other. I mean, there's one hotel up there, dude. I'm like, well, I got to go to, because I mean, last year's show was mind melting. It was just the crowd really, it was just going on. It looked like the Greek theater or something. It was unbelievable. It was really quite fantastic. And I just,
I would imagine we'd be staying like in an Airbnb or something. Like that's what we did out in Joshua Tree in Connecticut, I hope. I mean, as much as I like camping, like I love camping, like, in the mountains in New England and stuff. But if I got to play some shows and stuff, like it might be nice to not be in a tent, but I guess to just go wherever it goes. And I haven't heard anything about that, but I would assume we're in an Airbnb or something, But hey, man, keep the hotel, man. I love a hotel.
Hey, man, I'm going to be walking home. I mean, it's going to be like beg, steal, or borrow, 2 nickels or a dime, but it's worth it, man. I mean, I love you guys. And by the way, man, for you, I just want to say, a lot of self-love for everybody right now because, all the stuff that you're putting out, that you have put out into the ether, musically, artistically, so much stuff that I do too. I mean, it gets some recognition in this lifetime, but so much of it is going to live on long after we're gone. And I just think that you should try to, even in moments of frustration or despair or whatever, recognize that, you found your purpose in this life. And most people spend their whole lives trying to figure out what their purpose is here. You've already figured that out. So now it's just a matter of basically creating art and putting it out there. Whether for me, I'm creating, and I'm pretty. I'm not a perfectionist, so a lot of stuff goes out there that is the sound quality may not be perfect, or I may not sound so articulate, but it's not really about me, and my only point to you is just to continue on your path, man, and don't be overly critical about it because, you've done great work. You're going to continue to do great work, and there's a lot of, even if people never say anything, no one's ever going to say anything, man. You'd be lucky if people say shit, but you know what? They know it. It's there. And then the key is, can you rise in grace above the milieu and really inspire people to say, that like on this next tours, just keep growing into these new challenges, lean into that angst, lean into that adversity, and you'll continue to come out okay. But don't get me wrong, Charles Mingus died broke. So many geniuses died fucking broke, man. I mean, it's just it's just a struggle. Because in this life, you have to put, it's not just about you. You got to put food on the table. But the more that you put yourself out there and the more vulnerable you are and and if you don't allow resentment to creep in, the more stuff will fall into your lap too. And you got to have faith in that.
Yeah, totally, man. I agree with that. And,
and then we'll, man, it's true. It's the truth, man.
Just have fun. Have as much fun as possible.
There's 2 things, man. Krishna said 2 things. No, I want to be clear because you have this potential. And Krishna said the two most important things in life are make other people happy and be at ease with yourself. And so I'm still, listen, when I'm at ease with myself, I can make people happy, but I'm not always at ease with myself. So you have to work on those things, but you always will make people feel good about themselves, Zeph. So much love to you, man. I will be in Ojai, probably backstage. I mean, I can't even quite figure out the whole scheduling, but it's going to be mayhem, and I'm fired up to see fucking. I'm
looking forward to hanging out, man.
Yeah, we're going to be hanging, man, and be safe and treasure, even in the midst of the humidity of Shreveport. I mean, just scream out for liberation, man, because I'm still flying from those shows. I mean, I'm just on fire, so I can't wait to catch up.
That's great, man. Likewise.
And much love to you, man. Talk to you soon, man. Peace.
All right, man. Talk to you. Peace.
Later, dude.
Bye.
Yep. Always great to hang with Zephaniah OHora, an amazing singer and songwriter, band leader. Also recently has become part of the juggernaut known as Grateful Shred. They'll be playing a couple of concerts at the Libby Bowl in Ojai next weekend, and I will be in attendance. Back tomorrow on the Jake Feinberg Show with the legendary journalist Joel Selvin. Until then, peace.
Like the birds in blue out there on the neon avenue, but still I feel like a stranger. I feel like a stranger. Well, the music's thundering, reckless and hot. You keep firing glances across the room.